I always knew, deep in my heart, that waiting until marriage was the right choice for me. A decision not made lightly, but with conviction and hope. My name is Zainab, and for as long as I can remember, I have dreamed about this day. The day I would be with the man I loved, my newlywed husband, Idris. It wasn't just a fleeting dream or a fantasy. It was a hope that carried me through countless moments of doubt, temptation, and uncertainty. And today, standing here with Idris, I know every difficult choice I made was worth it. I remember the first time I met him as clearly as if it happened yesterday. Idris wasn't like anyone I'd ever met before. There was a quiet strength about him, a confidence that wasn't boastful but steady, like the grounding of a tree whose roots run deep. He had a kind heart, one that seemed to understand the unspoken feelings of others, and a respect for me that I hadn't experienced with anyone else. From our first conversation, I felt seen, as though he looked past the surface and recognized the person I was inside. We didn't rush into anything. It wasn't like the whirlwind romances you see in movies, where everything happens so fast you can barely keep up. Our relationship unfolded slowly, like the pages of a book being turned one by one, each revealing a little more of the story. We learned to trust each other, not just with words but with silences, with vulnerability, and with time. Over the years, we spoke about everything: our dreams, our fears, our ambitions, and our hopes for the life we wanted to build together. Yet, one topic remained unspoken, like a quiet shadow that lingered between us: intimacy. It wasn't avoidance, but rather a shared understanding that some things were meant to unfold naturally when the time was right. And now, with our wedding behind us, that time had arrived. Our wedding was a celebration of love and unity, filled with family, laughter, and a joy that felt almost tangible. But as the day drew to a close, a new chapter began. I found myself filled with a mix of emotions as the night approached: excitement and anticipation, yes, but also fear and uncertainty. Despite all the stories I had heard and the advice given by friends and family, nothing truly prepared me for this moment. When Idris and I entered our bedroom, the atmosphere shifted. It wasn't just a room anymore. It felt like a sacred space, just for us. He looked at me with eyes so tender they seemed to hold all the love in the world. There was no rush, no pressure, only the unspoken promise that we were in this together. "Zap, are you okay?" he asked softly, his voice as calm and soothing as a gentle breeze. The warmth of his hand holding mine steadied me, even as my nerves danced just beneath the surface. "Yes, Idris," I replied, my voice trembling slightly. "I'm just a little nervous." He smiled, leaning forward to place a soft kiss on my forehead. "It's okay," he said, his voice steady and reassuring. "We don't have to rush anything. We'll take our time and figure it out together." In that moment, his words felt like a lifeline. The nervousness in my chest didn't disappear, but it softened, replaced by a growing sense of safety. Idris had always been patient with me, but tonight, his patience felt like a gift, one that reminded me I wasn't alone. We sat on the edge of the bed, and he reached out, gently lifting my chin to meet his gaze. His eyes were filled with something I couldn't quite put into words, a mixture of love, understanding, and a quiet strength that told me he was with me every step of the way. "Zap, I love you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've waited for you, just like you've waited for me. We'll take this step together." Slowly, I smiled back at him, my heart swelling with emotion. In that moment, I knew that this wasn't just about the act of intimacy, it was about trust, love, and the connection we had built over the years. Idris wasn't just my husband, he was my partner, my safe place, and the person who saw me for who I truly was. He reached for my hand again, his touch warm and steady. Each gesture was deliberate, unhurried, as if he was savoring the moment. As he helped me out of my wedding dress, I felt a flood of emotions: shyness, vulnerability, and a growing sense of trust. It wasn't just about removing a garment. It was about shedding the last barriers between us. Every touch was gentle, every movement intentional. The room grew quieter, as if the world outside had paused just for us. I could feel my heart beating faster, not from fear, but from the sheer newness of the experience. Each time his fingers brushed against my skin, it was like a spark of warmth spreading through me, reminding me that this moment was ours alone. As my dress slipped off my shoulders and fell to the ground, I felt both exposed and embraced, as though I was standing at the edge of something beautiful and unknown. Idris stood up slowly, his eyes never leaving mine. His gaze was filled with admiration, a quiet reverence that made me feel seen in a way I had never felt before. "You're beautiful, Zab," he said softly, his voice full of sincerity. Those words hung in the air, wrapping around me like a warm embrace. It wasn't just the words themselves, it was the way he said them, with a depth of emotion that told me he meant every syllable. In his eyes, I wasn't just his wife, I was his partner, his equal, someone he cherished not just for how I looked but for who I was. That realization made my heart swell with gratitude. In that moment, I knew that this wasn't just the start of a physical journey. It was the beginning of a deeper bond, one built on love, respect, and trust. With each passing second, I felt more at ease. The vulnerability that had once felt daunting now felt like a gift, a chance to be fully known and fully loved. Idris's patience, his tenderness, and his unwavering respect reminded me that this was more than just a moment. It was the start of a lifetime together. One step at a time, I could feel my heart swelling with warmth as I gazed at him, the man who had become the center of my world. In his eyes, I saw more than just a husband or a partner. I saw someone who had truly embraced every facet of who I was, someone who accepted me without conditions. That realization brought a kind of joy that was both profound and humbling. My cheeks flushed, a rosy warmth spreading across them as his gaze remained steady on me. I felt an uncharacteristic shyness bubbling within me, but it was accompanied by a tender glow, a sensation that wrapped around me like a soft blanket on a cold night. It wasn't just his words that struck me, though they had always been kind and reassuring. It was the way he looked at me, as if I were someone precious, someone he cherished deeply. That look had a power of its own, a power to make me feel seen, valued, and irreplaceable. Though my instinct was to avert my eyes in bashfulness, I resisted. I wanted to hold on to that fleeting, magical moment. I wanted to let it etch itself into my heart, a memory to revisit on rainy days. There was something so profound about being truly appreciated, not just for what I did or said, but for who I was at my core. Then, slowly and with a measured grace that was uniquely his, he began to undress. His movements were deliberate, unhurried, as though he understood the importance of savoring this moment. I watched, unable to look away, as he revealed himself layer by layer. His physique was undeniably striking, strong and defined in a way that spoke of both discipline and vitality. Yet, what stood out more was the quiet gentleness in the way he carried himself. He wasn't merely a figure of strength. He was a man whose every action exuded kindness and thoughtfulness. As I took in the sight of him, a rush of emotion surged through me: excitement, curiosity, and a touch of nervousness. My heart raced as my mind tried to process it all. I felt a flurry of thoughts and feelings colliding within me, each one vying for attention. The excitement was electric, almost overwhelming, but it was tempered by a quiet sense of trust that grounded me. Though there was uncertainty in the air, it wasn't frightening. It was the kind of uncertainty that came with stepping into something new and beautiful, the kind that made you feel alive. The room around us seemed to fade into the background. Time slowed, and the silence between us grew, not as an empty void but as a shared space filled with unspoken understanding. In that stillness, I realized how extraordinary this moment was. It wasn't about the setting or the physicality. It was about the connection, the meeting of two souls that had chosen to come together, not out of obligation but out of genuine love and mutual respect. When we stood before each other, completely vulnerable, it felt as though the world had paused. There were no distractions, no noises to break the spell of the moment. His eyes met mine, and in that gaze, I saw the same mix of emotions I was feeling: anticipation, tenderness, and a deep, unwavering affection. Neither of us rushed to speak. Words felt unnecessary, almost intrusive. as though they might disrupt the delicate balance we had found. Then he stepped closer, his hands gently resting on my shoulders. The warmth of his touch sent a calming wave through me, soothing my earlier nerves. His voice, soft and steady, carried a reassurance that I clung to. "Zap, I want you to feel comfortable," he said, his tone laced with sincerity. "We'll take things slow." "All right." I nodded, my heart swelling with gratitude for his thoughtfulness. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of safety, a trust that went beyond words. As he leaned in, his lips brushed against mine in a kiss that was as gentle as a whisper. It wasn't hurried or demanding. Instead, it was filled with care, as if he wanted to communicate his love and respect without needing to say a single word. The tenderness of that kiss was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It carried with it a quiet promise that I was cherished, that I was safe, and that we were in this together. I kissed him back, my own emotions pouring into the connection we shared. Each movement felt like an unspoken conversation, a dance of trust and affection that needed no verbal translation. The warmth of his touch, the softness of his lips, all of it spoke volumes about the depth of his feelings for me. In that moment, I felt truly seen, truly loved, in a way that transcended the physical. As our embrace deepened, I felt the nervous energy within me begin to dissolve, replaced by a sense of calm and belonging. This wasn't just about the present moment. It was the culmination of everything we had built together. Every shared laugh, every heartfelt conversation, every quiet moment of understanding. This was the result of years of trust and love, woven together into a bond that felt unbreakable. It wasn't just our bodies that were close. It was our hearts and souls, finding a rhythm that was uniquely ours. I realized then that this was more than a moment of intimacy. It was a celebration of everything we had overcome and built together. The love we shared was no longer just an emotion. It was a living, breathing force that enveloped us, making everything else fade away. As he kissed me once more, I felt a quiet certainty settle over me. This was right. This was us. And in that moment, there was nothing else I needed, nothing else that mattered. We were two people, vulnerable yet unafraid, stepping into a future that felt limitless. And as we stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, I knew that whatever lay ahead, we would face it together. It wasn't just about us being together in a physical way. It was about sharing something profoundly personal and deeply meaningful. This wasn't merely an act. It was a union of hearts, a way of offering a part of ourselves to each other. By doing so, we were both giving and receiving love in its purest form, a love that carried an unspoken promise of trust, a vow of respect, and a deep commitment to care for one another. As the realization settled in, I understood that this moment was far more significant than I had imagined. It transcended intimacy. It symbolized the dawn of something entirely new. It wasn't just a fleeting encounter or a snapshot in time. No, this was the beginning of a shared journey, an unwritten chapter of our lives where every step would be taken together. It felt as though we were planting the seeds of something uniquely ours, something beautiful and enduring that would flourish with time and nurture. Idris's hands moved gently down my back, his touch both tender and deliberate. The sensation sent a soft shiver through me, awakening emotions I had never felt before. My heart raced as an unfamiliar warmth spread across my skin, and I felt a tingle that resonated far beyond the surface. His touch wasn't just physical. It was deeply connective, a silent language that spoke of understanding, care, and devotion. What struck me most was the care in his movements. There was no urgency, no rush to reach a destination. Instead, every gesture was deliberate, as though he was savoring the moment just as much as I was. It was as if he could sense my thoughts, responding to them even before I could voice them. His fingers would linger, pausing just enough to check, to ask without words, "Are you okay? Do you feel safe?" It was in these silent questions that I found reassurance. I realized that this wasn't just about Idris being attentive. It was about his genuine desire to ensure I felt secure, cherished, and respected. He wasn't just present. He was fully attuned to me, making every moment feel intentional and sacred. There was a certain beauty in the slowness, a rhythm that mirrored the depth of our connection. It wasn't about reaching a climax or ticking off milestones. It was about the journey itself, the shared experience of two souls coming together in trust and vulnerability. As Idris whispered, "Are you okay?" his forehead resting gently against mine. His voice was low and tender, like a melody meant only for me. "Yes," I replied softly, my voice a mere breath, but filled with certainty. In that moment, I wasn't just answering his question, I was affirming everything I felt: the trust, the safety, the love. When he kissed me again, this time with more passion, I could feel his sincerity in every movement. He guided me with a gentleness that was both comforting and invigorating. Each kiss, each caress felt like a step deeper into a connection that was as emotional as it was physical. When he eased me back onto the bed, his hands never left me, grounding me in the present, assuring me that I wasn't alone in this. There was vulnerability in allowing myself to trust so fully. But with Idris, that vulnerability didn't feel like a risk, it felt like freedom. I closed my eyes and let myself surrender to the moment, knowing that he would hold me in every sense of the word. It wasn't just about the physical act. It was about the shared understanding that this moment was ours and ours alone. As we came together, I was struck by an overwhelming sense of awe. It was unlike anything I had ever imagined. The reality of it, the genuine, unfiltered nature of the experience, was more magical than any fantasy. It wasn't perfect in the way one might script it, but it was perfect in its authenticity. Every touch, every movement felt like a discovery, a mutual exploration of each other's emotions and boundaries. Idris's patience was remarkable. He moved with care, always attuned to how I was feeling. There was no rush, no pressure, only a steady rhythm that reflected his commitment to ensuring my comfort. I felt the weight of his attention, the way he seemed to focus solely on me, making me feel like the center of his universe. There were moments when nervousness crept in, flashes of uncertainty about what lay ahead. But each time, Idris was there, his warmth and presence dissolving my fears. His hands were steady, his touch a quiet promise that I was safe. "We're in this together," he whispered, his voice steady and reassuring. Those words became an anchor for me, a reminder that this was a partnership, a shared experience built on mutual trust. As the night unfolded, my nerves melted away completely. What began as an uncertain step turned into a profound experience, a memory we were weaving together. It wasn't about fleeting passion or momentary satisfaction. It was about building something lasting, something rooted in love and respect. I felt cherished in a way I had never known before, as if every part of me was seen and valued. When we finally drifted into sleep, I lay in Idris's arms, my heart brimming with gratitude. This was more than the culmination of a night. It was the beginning of a new journey. In the quiet darkness, I could hear his soft breathing and feel the warmth of his embrace, a reminder that this was just the start of something beautiful. As morning came, I woke to find his arms still draped over me, holding me close. The sunlight streamed through the window, casting a gentle glow over his face. For a while, I stayed still, savoring the peace of the moment. My heart was full, not just from the events of the night before, but from the knowledge that we were stepping into this new chapter together. This was love in its truest form, patient, respectful, and deeply transformative. And as I lay there, I couldn't wait to see where this journey would take us. I had never envisioned intimacy as something so serene, so intrinsically perfect. It wasn't just the touch or the closeness. It was the quiet understanding that seemed to flow effortlessly between us. Idris stirred beside me, his body shifting slightly under the morning light. When his eyes fluttered open and he saw I was awake, a smile lit up his face, tender and warm, radiating a kind of affection that made my heart skip a beat. "Good morning, my love," he murmured, his voice still laced with sleep. There was a raw, unguarded quality to his tone that made the moment feel even more intimate. "Good morning," I replied softly, my own voice barely audible, as if speaking louder might shatter the delicate tranquility of the moment. A rush of warmth spread through me, like sunlight breaking through clouds on a cold day. "How are you feeling?" Idris asked, his hand reaching out to brush a stray strand of hair from my face. His touch was gentle, yet his concern was palpable, mirrored in the depths of his eyes. In that moment, I felt truly seen, cared for in a way I hadn't known was possible. "I'm okay," I admitted, my cheeks flushing slightly. There was something about his unwavering attention that made me feel vulnerable yet cherished. I hadn't anticipated feeling this safe, this completely loved. He leaned in and pressed a soft kiss to my forehead, a gesture so tender it made my chest tighten with emotion. "You are everything I've ever wanted, Zap. I'm so grateful for this moment with you." His words, so simple yet so profound, carried a weight that lingered in the air between us. I smiled back at him, my heart swelling as I reflected on how far we had come. The night before had been magical, but it had also opened my eyes to the vast expanse of what lay ahead. So much to learn, so much to share, so much to grow together. This was just the beginning, a fresh chapter in the story of us. As days turned into weeks, Idris and I found ourselves settling into a rhythm that felt both new and familiar. Every day was an exploration, a journey into deeper understanding. We shared stories of our pasts, from childhood memories to adolescent dreams, peeling back the layers that made us who we were. He told me about his aspirations, what he wanted for us, for our future. I found myself sharing parts of me I had never shared with anyone else. Each revelation, each moment of vulnerability, seemed to bind us closer together. The connection between us wasn't just physical, though that too evolved naturally and beautifully. Idris had a way of making me feel completely at ease. He never rushed me, never pushed beyond what I was comfortable with. He seemed to intuitively understand that intimacy was as much about trust and emotional safety as it was about desire. We learned to read each other's unspoken cues, to communicate without words. He would hold me when I needed comfort, laugh with me when I needed joy, and simply be present when I needed quiet. One evening, as we sat on the balcony of our home, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I turned to him with a thought that had been brewing in my mind. "Idris," I began, my voice steady yet tinged with wonder, "I feel like I've known you forever." He turned to me, his expression softening. "I feel the same, Zap. It's as if we were always meant to find each other, like everything in our lives led us here." His words settled over me like a comforting embrace. In that moment, I understood that this wasn't just a fleeting romance. It was something far deeper, a partnership, a shared destiny. The life we were building wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and that made it beautiful. Few weeks later, I began to notice subtle changes within myself. Nothing dramatic, just a faint feeling that something was different. It started as a quiet intuition, a whisper I couldn't quite decipher. I brushed it off at first, chalking it up to overthinking, but the feeling persisted. Eventually, curiosity and caution led us to seek answers. When the results came back, they confirmed what I had only dared to suspect. I was pregnant. The news hit me like a wave, a whirlwind of emotions crashing over me. There was joy, unmistakable and pure, but also a flicker of apprehension. The idea of bringing a new life into the world, of raising a child with Idris, filled me with a mix of awe and responsibility. I'll never forget the way Idris reacted. His face lit up, a blend of excitement and wonder. "Zab," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "this is the greatest gift we could ever receive." He pulled me into his arms, holding me as if he could shield me from every worry, every doubt. In that embrace, I felt an unspoken promise. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. That night, as we lay side by side, the weight of the moment settled over us. The world felt impossibly vast and yet contained entirely within the walls of our home. I rested my hand over my stomach, marveling at the thought of the life growing inside me. This was a new chapter, one we would write as a family. Over time, our bond only deepened. We shared more than just dreams and laughter. We shared the quiet, unremarkable moments that made up everyday life. There were mornings spent sipping tea in comfortable silence, afternoons filled with light-hearted banter, and nights where we simply held each other, speaking volumes without uttering a word. Idris had a way of making even the mundane feel magical. Through it all, I realized how profoundly I had changed. The woman I saw in the mirror was no longer the girl who had doubted her worth or feared the unknown. I had grown into someone stronger, more confident, and deeply loved. Idris had been my partner in this transformation, his unwavering support a constant source of strength. As I drifted off to sleep each night, cradled in his arms, I felt an unshakable peace. It wasn't just the love we shared. It was the certainty that we were building something enduring, something that would carry us through every high and low. Together, we were unstoppable, and the future, no matter what it held, felt infinitely bright. Thank you for taking the time to watch our videos. If you find the content useful and interesting, don't forget to like, share, and especially subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new videos. Our channel will always update attractive, inspiring, and useful content for you. Click the bell icon to receive notifications as soon as there are new videos. Your support is the biggest motivation for us to continue to develop. Thank you and see you in the next videos.